Hello and welcome to another episode of the Engineering Influence Podcast. My name is Diana Olaire and I'm with ACEC National. And today's show is brought to you by The Market Edge, a new podcast series that was created by ACEC National members who participate in a new committee, and it's the Market Intelligence Committee here. And so today we have with us Peter Nabhan, a geotechnical engineer and business strategist for a member firm, ECS. And today's conversation is really going to focus on the data center market. We'll cover co-location and tech bubble fears, and we'll really dive in. So Peter, happy holidays, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, happy holidays to you, Diana. And it's my pleasure. It's my absolute pleasure to be here and talk about this very exciting topic. I mean, it's on everyone's minds.
Yeah. So before we get into some questions, I did want to share a little bit more about Peter so you know who you're listening to. So as I mentioned, he's with ECS group of companies. They're an ENR top 100 firm. He focuses on scaling national accounts, building new service lines, and helping clients and teams really navigate complex multi-market developments. He's led major programs across healthcare and retail, for example, and now he's the firm's head and leads mission critical practice there. He's also a top 20 under 40 healthcare leader and founder at AE Centric. You'll have to tell me if I said that right, an AI advisory firm. And he's also a member of our Market Intelligence Committee. We're really happy to have him. So when you and I spoke before, Peter, before this call, you mentioned that somehow you're also involved in your company's internal board or working group for how ECS is going to use AI. So is that right? Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, every company is looking to enhance their processes, is looking to improve delivery for customers. And for us, we call it broadly technology. It's a technology committee. And we're focused on helping our people deliver better to our customers. And some of it's going to be evaluating AI technologies or AI products, or even developing our own AI processes or AI-enabled processes. But that's the intent behind this, is making fulfillment of our services more streamlined. We have better speed to market and just using AI tools. And I think it's very important to have committees around this so you can have early adopters understand the use case. You can have people on the front line, test, evaluate, iterate technologies, because nothing is a one size fits all. I think companies tend to rush to go and buy this extremely expensive piece of software or AI enabled tool, but no one uses it. And then they sunset it within 12 months. So that's not what we're trying to do. We go through a committee, we evaluate things. We have a Northern Star, but we move slowly and we do things that solve business problems.
Everybody's got a technology committee. Even ACEC National here has one. Digital transformation has become the hot buzzword in addition to just AI in our industry, among many others, if not all. So how do you see the AI boom driving data center development? Like, what are the big trends you're seeing out there that our members should know about?
The way I see it, I would say it's not driving, it's completely changing the equation. It's skyrocketing data center development. And the easy way to understand it is data centers are evaluated from a power standpoint, or what they call the power to compute, so energy. A few years ago, prior to AI, the data center asset was sized or developed for, cloud enterprise, small loads, stuff that's manageable, that doesn't require a lot of power. Today, these AI have GPUs, which is graphic processing units. They have racks and racks and racks of GPUs, which use a tremendous amount of power, and they generate a lot of heat, which you need to cool it. So you have that combination of the two. If I look at your report that you published, the 2025 Market Intelligence Brief, the estimate for the AI power consumption is 4 gigawatts in 2024. That's expected to go to 123 by 2035. That's a 40% compounded annual growth rate, which is mind-blowing. So you can imagine how many, the extent of data center needed to accommodate that increase in power to compute. Now we're seeing campuses, large campuses being developed over 100 megawatt, which let's say a few years ago was not something people would even wrap their heads around. So we think it's a fundamental transformation, and it's not just for data center development; it's also for energy, the grids, and we are to an extent becoming an AI-based economy.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's not just about the data centers, which a lot of engineers kind of refer to it as a simple box. You know, it's not very sexy. It's a box, but it's really the ancillary services that come with it. It's the water use. It's the energy implication. And that's where some engineering firms are really seeing the bulk of the work or in these other markets. So let's talk about one in particular. We've got hyperscalers. So can you explain the role of them in the market today and why co-locating data centers with power sources is becoming so critical, or at least interesting?
Right. No, it's true. And you look at so how much do hyperscalers own? How much of the market do hyperscalers own? They own close to 50% of the power to compute. And that is expected to go up. And if you combine the hyperscalers with the large co-locators, which hyperscalers also lease space from, you're looking at 70%. So their needs dominate the industry, as you can imagine. If you have that much of the industry, your needs dominate the industry. And now once you start looking at these massive campuses, you have to have an energy source readily available. Because if you don't, those upgrades to the grid take years. And we don't have years. We're looking to lead AI as a country. So it's so critical to be near those power sources. And then especially with these mega campuses, you need space. A lot of times more than 100 acres, because you're not just putting data halls. Data halls is a small percentage of the occupancy of the physical space. You'll need to have cooling yards. You need to have a substation is very important. You need to have storage for redundancy, so your data center doesn't go down. You need to have generator fields. So you're looking at a large, maybe 100 plus acre campus. I would say then the land limitation is you have to be near a power source. You have to have line transmission access somewhat readily available, high voltage nearby. You need to have space for your cooling and mechanical systems. And of course, you need to have buffer zones to minimize your community impact. You live in Maryland, so maybe not very close to data center, but your neighbors in Northern Virginia, they have noise, a lot of noise living next to data center.
Oh, yeah.
People do not enjoy that. So you need some setbacks. That's something that the industry is working on improving for sure.
All right. So why don't we talk about the water story? We kind of talked about co-locating with power, but how about the water story in data center development? It turns out it's a little bit more nuanced than we had originally thought. How are firms balancing cooling needs with the big sustainability concerns that are really out there, Peter?
It's a very important topic, especially in certain states where the water supply is stressed. From my standpoint, the water story is more relevant to older data center developments that were high consumers of water. But now the new data centers, a lot of them use either closed loop or low water cooling, maybe air cooling. So there's not a whole lot of water usage. However, there's still that perception in places like Arizona, you're in the desert. So you don't have a lot of water. Your older data centers used to consume water. The new campuses do not consume as much water. Actually, they consume very little water comparatively, but there's still that perception that, well, a data center development is going to come and run the wells dry. And that's where you have to work with the community, reshape that understanding, work with the broader community so you don't have those challenges in your development. And the hyperscalers did have that commitment. They have a commitment for water positive operations by 2030, which is very good. That's helping anchor the goal of we're not using a lot of water, or we're offsetting our water usage. So it becomes less critical as we develop. The industry is addressing that, targeting those sustainability goals, as we mentioned. But yeah, it's still an ongoing thing in places like Arizona, maybe Colorado, Montana, where the water supply is always, in jeopardy.
So you talked a little bit about Northern Virginia earlier. We know that's kind of like the primary area of growth. Are there other hot markets that you all are tracking for new data center development that you can share?
Absolutely. And that's not something we're under NDA for. So the data center alley, that is by far the world leader in data center development. And the reason why is they have a unbelievable, positive regulatory environment, and they have a very strong grid. So Dominion Energy started back in the 70s to develop that grid, create those very strong backbones. But now you look at other markets, you look at old industrial markets. So Columbus, Ohio, that's a very strong market from a power standpoint. They're getting heavy data center development. Cities like Atlanta, Georgia Power has also done a very good job. So there's readily available power in Atlanta. Chicago, old industrial, low risk. There's no really any environmental or weather issues that happen in Chicago. So Chicago gets a lot of data center development. The DFW market, Phoenix. And I think you did a great job, by the way, in your report mentioning those top 10 markets for development. And I do think any city technically can become a hotspot if you have a favorable power generation structure and you have somewhat expedited permitting processes or easy permitting processes. So yeah, there's opportunities everywhere in many, many states, but at this point, we're still looking at those, 5 to 10 large markets.
Well, thanks for the shout out on the brief, Peter. And for those that aren't aware, the Market Intelligence Brief is a quarterly series that comes out. It's a 4-page report that we work with the Market Intelligence Committee on to get the latest trends and data out on a specific market. So we'll make sure to include a link to access that in the show notes for today's session. I wanted to move on to this bubble talk. I'm a regular listener to, Bloomberg 99.1, and some fear the bubble the tech bubble's going to pop. And so do you see signs of oversupply or things slowing down? How do you feel actually being out there pursuing this work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of times the media like to say things like bubble because that gets people to click and watch and gets the eyeballs paying attention. Maybe we should say bubble on the podcast so people watch it, listen to it more often. But yes, there is a bubble pattern developing in technology or AI companies, because some of them it's just a function of excitement. People get too excited. There's no real fundamental revenue model to generate cash. And you have these insane valuations, which is somewhat similar to back in the dot-com bust back in 2000. You had a lot of companies that went under, but the strong companies continued. Now, that is one side of the story, but the reality from a data center development standpoint is actually we're way undersupplied. So the demand by far exceeds the supply currently. You did mention in your report, you're going from 4 gigawatts to 123 gigawatts. So we need a lot more capacity. And actually vacancies, all-time low, close to 0%. There is no speculative development as far as I know yet. A lot of the sites under construction, they're pre-leased. The constraint that we're hitting is power. That's our constraint. It's not that we're oversupplied at all. We're actually undersupplied, and we're supply constrained by power.
Where I hear a lot of
data center, if you're in the business, if you're in the AEC business, expect a lot more data center construction.
You heard it here first, everybody, for Peter at ECS. Keep on going. So the way I hear about the tech bubble is a lot, in conversations with day traders in the stock market. And it's because of them moving into their phase 2, the Magnificent Seven or this Big Four or whatever we're calling them now, is that they need phase 2 to happen for them to be successful? Right now, everybody is signing up for the free version of AI. They need enterprise-wide adoption like your firm and our association to buy the paid-for version and implement it enterprise-wide so that they can take those revenue expectations to the next level. And so it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, what do you think? Do you think people stay with the free versions, or do you think they finally take the next step and start implementing? And what's ECS doing?
Yeah, no, I would, on that topic, it's a function of, most importantly is, are you solving a pain for someone? And if you are solving a pain, if you're solving a problem, then they will pay for it. People pay for their time. That's the most important thing. People pay for your time. So if you save them time, then they will pay for it. And we've seen with SaaS, software as a service, that freemium model or subscription-based model, very successful. I know from myself, I have probably all the memberships you can imagine, because I can, at a click of a button, have things delivered to my house. I don't have to go to a store. I don't have to get in a car, find parking, do all that. I think we have a great technology. Now we're looking at use cases, and there's a lot of nuance from a use case standpoint, because what ECS needs, like my top 3 priorities as a company, are going to be very different than what ACEC needs from an AI-enabled tool. So yeah, that's the transition. And in the transition, the strong companies with the valid and valuable products will make it to that phase 2 that you're mentioning. And then the ones with a product that doesn't really solve a problem will just evaporate.
So I want to get back a little bit to the physical infrastructure of the data center, and you talked about the power concerns. And so we talked a little bit about connecting to the grid. So can you share examples of how they are connecting and how your firm is approaching what might be challenges that are arising from this?
Yeah, it's a very important topic. So to connect to the grid, a lot of times it's major upgrades. So it's not just a substation on site. That is a very, very key thing for a data center, but it's also your high voltage transmission lines. Sometimes you have to do upstream upgrades, transmission upgrades. A company like us, ECS, what we've done actually this past year is we've hired an energy director. So someone that is pursuing power generation and transmission. That is, as we mentioned, that is the critical supply issue that data centers have now, is the power. Our company, we're a environmental geotech firm, construction material testing is. So what we provide is we help companies, power companies or data center development companies or hyperscalers, help them de-risk their projects by providing them environmental risks or geotechnical subsurface issues. Maybe we help them with NEPA reviews, wetland permitting, regulatory support. So that's the type of stuff that we provide. So your permitting is faster, your design is more effective. We help with the geotechnical design. So your design is more effective. So your speed to market increases. And we're talking about how important it is to move at speed. Because again, we need a lot more power, and we need a lot more power to compute. And in order to hit that 40-50% compound annual growth rate, things need to move fast. So that's essentially how ECS is supporting the space. And I will add a caveat. You might have heard this. Some of the hyperscalers, even co-location companies, they're exploring the model of generating energy on site. It's called the SMR, or the small modular reactor. Have you heard of that?
Yep. I've heard cool. It could take longer though to actually happen. Like, we're further away from nuclear clean energy as a power source for data centers than we think. I mean, what are you seeing? I heard it was 10 years. Now I heard it's maybe 5 years. You're out there. What are you hearing?
We're not seeing it happen. So we're very involved in the development life cycle. So we're not seeing it happen. But the research, or if you go and look at some of these resources, they are pushing it. big companies, hyperscalers, they're investing a lot of money into this concept, into this new technology. I would assume there's some viability to it. Obviously, they're making big bets. They make asymmetric bets. If it's successful, then it's something that might be huge. If not, we'll continue to get power to their site, the good old-fashioned way, the way we're doing it now.
So there were some locations already selected for co-location opportunities, and that is available on the market intel brief. So if you haven't checked it out, go ahead and get into that. That is probably about all the time we're going to have for today. Listeners, please don't forget to like and subscribe ACAC's Engineering Influence podcast and YouTube channel today. Peter, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and please continue to publish your content. Those were very valuable 4 pages, probably the most valuable 4 pages I've read recently.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. And thank you everyone else for joining the Market Edge today. See you next time.